Welcome once again to Dialogue on Public Issues. I'm John Chowning, Campbellsville University, and today I'm interviewing Travis Burton, Director of Political Affairs with the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. Travis, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am from Rockcastle County.
Not Adair County, as
Not
I
Adair
assumed.
County. My last name is Burton,
Right.
so I can, in the right situations, pass to be
Right,
from Adair
right.
County. But no, I'm from Rockcastle County, Broadhead, Kentucky. I live in Garrett County now with my wife, Lindsay. She's a kindergarten teacher
Okay.
there in Garrett County. I work at the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, Director of Political Affairs, and before that I was at the Department of Agriculture, where I worked with Commissioner James Comer,
Okay.
who is, I know now, your congressman.
Right.
A few years back, though, he served as Agriculture Commissioner, and I worked
I think
with
that's
him.
when our paths first crossed.
Probably
I think
so.
I first met you years ago when you were working for then Commissioner, now Congressman Comer, and I apologize for interrupting you and saying that your name, but many of us in this area know of the Burton family and the large number of Burtons in nearby Adair County. So you may be kin to them and just don't know it.
That's right. That's right.
So we'll claim you as a part of Southern Kentucky. What are your duties at the chamber? What exactly do you do?
So at the Kentucky Chamber, I'm responsible for our education and workforce policy work. I work in that space. I represent the business community on a variety of committees to make sure that their voice is being heard. We work with the legislature to make sure that they understand where the business community falls. And really it can be an education effort so that they know how invested that the business community is in Kentucky's education system. We work with a variety of stakeholders to try to make sure that Kentucky has the best education system possible. And why is that so important to us? It's because of workforce. We are talking about, when we talk about educating our kids, we're talking about the members of the workforce for our members in the future. So getting it right is very important. We're a team, so it's all hands on deck. I help out with healthcare issues, environment issues, and we all work together on those things. I also help with our political action committee, and we have a 501c4 called the Kentucky Chamber Advocacy Committee that helps us educate the public on various issues. So I do a lot of work with that.
Does that PAC actually endorse candidates on occasion?
So our political action committee does. It's called Kentucky Chamber PAC. Every 2 years there are legislative elections, and during those cycles, a questionnaire is sent out to anyone running for a place in the legislature, and we ask just where they stand. Our membership develops a questionnaire about key issues they feel that's important to the state. So we question, our board reviews those, and they make a determination whether to get involved in those races by issuing an endorsement or not. So.
Now, the Chamber has several councils and advisory groups. I'm one of those members that calls in usually for the membership on the Education Workforce Council. But what is the overall mission of the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce?
The overall mission is to make Kentucky the place to do business. We want to make sure that policies and things taking place in Frankfort are things that are going to make this a place you can do business, you can start a business, you can bring a business to, and so that our families and our citizens can find opportunity. And that takes working together, so we work very hard to bring not just businesses together, but all groups and all stakeholders, so that we can all be on the same page as much as possible moving our state forward.
Now, a lot of people out there would be familiar with the local Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
Most every community has a local Chamber of Commerce. Now we're talking about the State Chamber of Commerce. Periodically you will see reference in the media or on television, U.S. Chamber of Commerce. How do those organizations interface and interact together? I know they're all autonomous in a sense,
That's
but
right.
they are related.
We all work together. We do, every chamber is its own chamber. And some people think, especially in Frankfort, sometimes you'll say, well, you tell my local chamber that I need them. Well, it doesn't quite work like that, but on issues, we try to communicate, stay on the same page. It's important for us to hear from local chambers so we know what issues they're facing and what issues businesses are facing across the state. Every area is different, every region is different. So being able to have the lines of communication open is very important to what we do. And the same with the U.S. Chamber and the Kentucky Chamber. The U.S. Chamber, we communicate with them what's happening in Kentucky. We sometimes ask them for their expertise on certain issues or what's happening in other states that maybe we could look at and apply here in Kentucky. And sometimes they come to us and say, how did you do that in Kentucky? A couple of examples is the Workforce Center, the Kentucky Chamber Workforce Center. That's become a national model. That center is building a talent pipeline in different industry sectors to help meet the workforce demands we see here in Kentucky. That's a national model, so the U.S. Chamber has asked our Workforce Center to go to various other states and talk about how did we get that set up. A couple years back, we worked very closely with State Representative Bam Carney and Senator Max Wise to pass an essential skills bill. We hear about the lack of soft skills. We hear about students and those entering the workforce not knowing how to communicate, not knowing to show up to work on time, not knowing it's important to pass a drug test. So we worked on legislation to try to tackle that issue. The U.S. Chamber took note. We were the first state to identify those skills and put that in statute, caught the attention of the U.S. Chamber, and they've asked us to talk to other chambers about that. How did we do that? How did we begin that process? And how did we get it to the point that it is today?
Now, is that soft skills program now being taught in the local schools?
Yes.
Okay.
And schools had a lot of flexibility. A lot of schools were doing good work on that front. And so we just wanted to make it so that schools could be intentional about teaching those skills. They're already tasked with a lot. And so we wanted we worked closely with school representation in Frankfort to get this right. And to make it not a burden, but to really incorporate what is working well, and so that we as a state could be intentional on that.
You have some direct Campbellsville input and participation in the workforce area. One of our local industries has a plant manager that's very active. Tell us about that connection.
So, and I actually, before I was here, I was down the road at Murakami. Michael Rodenberg, who's CEO down there, he just took over the reins as chairman of the Kentucky Chamber Workforce Center. He's an outstanding individual, and they're doing great work there at Murakami and working with the community. I know they hire, I think, about 330 people here locally.
Right.
And so he's displayed a lot of strong leadership here in Taylor County and the region. And so in discussions about how do we get our workforce needs met on a statewide level, it made sense to talk to him because he's done that here, and so he served on the board there and has become chairman of the board and is working on a variety of programs. One was actually launched here in Taylor County, a pilot program called Bus to Business, and this was his idea, where businesses would help get students from local high schools in their doors so that they could talk to them, they could have conversations with employers, learn about possible career opportunities firsthand. That was Chairman Rodenberg's vision, and we launched that, tried it out here in Taylor County back in the spring, and we actually just concluded a statewide model of that in early October. That was a true success. It got about 1,200 students in businesses across Kentucky, again, so they could get that up-close look at career opportunities. So,
what do you think, and what is the Chamber saying in that, particularly in the area of education and the relationship of education to workforce training and thus economic growth and development? What are our major challenges and needs right now in the Commonwealth?
I'll tell you, there is a language barrier between education and business. And we have to break down that barrier in order to meet the demands of the workforce. I think programs like Bus to Business, it's pretty simple. Let's put some kids on a bus and send them to a business. The teachers go along with them. They also get that same experience. That's a huge, it's simple, but that's a huge step in breaking down that barrier so that education and business are on the same page when we're discussing what are our workforce needs. And by having everyone on the same page, by having educators and students in these businesses, they go back to their classrooms with an enhanced knowledge of what they need to be working on. How will the skills they're learning in school truly be applied in the real world, and how can you apply those skills to help those students be successful?
Mm-hmm.
So breaking down that language barrier, it's easier said than done, but I think there's some good work being done to do that, and we're very supportive of programs that do that, just like Bus to Business.
And that kind of program is relatively simple to implement, and I would presume there's some cost to it, but it's not fiscally, it's pretty low compared to a lot of programs that policymakers come up with sometimes.
And this program was business led, and that's the burden on our side is we've got to figure out a way to get employers more engaged. Now, from day to day, an employer's pretty busy.
Right.
They've got a business to run. They've got payroll to meet. They've got other responsibilities that they've got to see to. So figuring out ways like Bus to Business that make it easy for them to engage. And that's what education needs. Education needs business to be engaged so that they can take advantage of their resources, so that they can take advantage of the knowledge and take advantage of work-based learning opportunities that employers can provide. So we're continuing to work to break down the language barrier so that we can see more of those things come into reality.
You recently attended a roundtable here on the campus with Congressman Comer and U.S. Representative Virginia Fox, ranking member of the House Education and Labor Committee, looking at Campbellsville University, and a little bit of editorial posturing here on my part, putting you on the spot a little bit. But that's, I'm doing the interview.
I am a Georgetown alum, so as long as they don't see this,
okay, we won't let them, and the Tigers. But the focus was looking at some of our non-traditional career paths into employable positions and non-degreed programs. What was your impression of that day and some of the things that are happening here on this campus? Somewhat innovative and somewhat unique, at least for private colleges and universities.
Oh, it was great, and it just a few minutes in, it was there was no doubt as to why Congressman Comer chose to bring Dr. Fox here. He was, you could tell he was so excited to show off what you all are doing, and I mean, it was a pretty lengthy roundtable because you all had so many things to discuss, and it was so interesting to see a national leader like that sitting here, and her eyebrows were continuously being raised when you all would discuss the different programs you have. It's truly inspirational to see how Campbellsville University has identified challenges to the workforce, challenges to getting your students into successful career paths, and you've really just grabbed the bull by the horns. And I, one example, and I was the foster population that I know Campbellsville is working with, and getting them aligned with attainable certificates or degrees to enter the workforce. That was one thing that really stood out that I thought, wow. And also, and I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it was very telling that I want to say Campbellsville is maybe the largest school, post-secondary school in Congressman Comer's congressional district.
We now have the largest enrollment in the
largest
first congressional district.
And that's extremely impressive when you think about there's some state schools in the district as well. But I think it speaks to Campbellsville's their realistic approach to meeting the challenge of the workforce and filling those needs, because that's how you're going to make your students successful.
And as our president, Mike Carter, would say, it may be, if not the only place, not very many places in the United States that you can come and get a welding certificate or barbering certificate or any number of other 25 or 30 other certificate and short-term training programs or 1-year degrees or 2-year degrees, all the way to a PhD.
Yeah.
And 100 other degree options at the various levels.
Yeah. That's great.
Within a Christian, with a Christian emphasis. It's a unique brand, a model, and I will exercise editorial and producer rights, and I may get fired for doing this, but Congressman Comer said that he was going to take it back in his exit interview with the press as the business model for higher ed in the nation. And he would never make a statement of hyperbole, and Dr. Fox said it was the model that she was looking for in terms of innovation and best use of federal dollars in terms of financial aid and career paths and employability, and minimizing student debt.
And that's what is driving the conversation right now, and that's why Campbellsville is such a good model. Is they've identified what needs to happen, where are the needs, how can we meet those needs, and instead of hoping the environment around Campbellsville change, Campbellsville watched the environment and adapted to that, and adapted the model to that, and is meeting the needs. It's tremendous.
We still have that core liberal arts core, traditional liberal arts core, and theology and the sciences as well as liberal arts, and we do very, very well at that. We're not abandoning that, but we have to do a lot more to meet the needs of this economy and this world. And we think it's part of our mission.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah. Now, Public Policy Agenda 2020 General Assembly. New governor will be in office. Challenging budgetary situation, pension issue still on the table. What will be the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce's principal public policy agenda going into the 2020 General Assembly?
And I should have said this earlier, but when you asked about what the Chamber does, I think it's important to note that I think it's between 70 and 80% of policies that impact a business from day to day. So any business down here on Main Street in Campbellsville, 70 to 80% of the laws and regulations that will impact them day to day are made in Frankfort, not DC.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that go on, whether it's in the executive branch or the legislative branch in Frankfort, and so that's why we're there. We're there to watch those things. And that is always going to be our number one thing, is to see what is happening on the regulatory side and what's happening on the legislative side to protect business, to make sure that our state can be as competitive as possible and that opportunity can continue to grow. Now, how do we do that in 2020? We certainly do have our work cut out for us, as you mentioned. We have a pension situation. There's no doubt. Our pension system is one of the worst funded in the nation. It's getting better thanks to the leadership that has identified that as something that's going to have to be tackled. That is being tackled, but it's still there. The problem is still there. It's not fixed. So there's going to have to be more conversations about how do we continue to do this in the future. And I think that you'll hear that. Now, next year is an election year. So I think some issues that need to be tackled may not be tackled, but we're going to be talking about the importance of sustainable government. We're going to be talking about the need to invest in infrastructure. One of the main reasons that Kentucky can be competitive and that Kentucky can bring jobs here and that jobs and opportunity can thrive is because we have good roads, we have good airports, we have telecom. So we're going, though, as a state, to have to continue and make sure we are properly investing in that infrastructure. That's important for everybody. It's not just important so we can bring businesses here. It's important so when I'm driving out of my subdivision and onto the road and on my way to work each day, that my car isn't taking on unnecessary damage, and it impacts everybody. So we've got to invest in infrastructure. We've got to look at education. One of the big pressing issues that's getting a lot more attention is not just early childhood education, but it's access to high quality early education, high quality child care. There's a lot of places in Kentucky that families don't have anywhere to take their kids during the day. So what does that mean? That means they're staying at home. They're not necessarily being exposed to high quality learning environments. That means that those family members are not participating in the workforce. So access to high quality childcare is going to be something we need to spend some time talking about because it impacts the workforce of today. Who can we have in the workforce? or are they going to be needing to stay home if they don't have access to childcare? And then the kids that are impacted by that, because if we can ensure access to high quality learning environments where they can be cared for now, that's going to develop them for later on in life. And so we need to be talking about that. So it's an issue that impacts the workforce of today and the workforce of tomorrow.
Will tax reform be on the table? Serious discussion, do you think, Travis?
I think so. I think the General Assembly took a swap at it a couple years back. Some positive things happened, and so we've got to continue to look at how we are taxing people. Before the last swap at tax reform, it hadn't been updated probably since the invention of the iPhone or long before. Probably the last time before the first tax reform bill a couple of years ago went through, instead of downloading or watching movies, I should say streaming movies on Netflix, we were all going to Blockbuster. And so updating that to a modern economy was very important, and it's important that we continue to do that. We've got to continue to broaden the base. We've got to look at the ways that we'll put revenue in our coffers so that we can invest in education and that we can invest in infrastructure. And I think tax reform is going to be the way to do that. So I do think they'll be taking, with serious needs comes serious discussion, and I think any serious discussion about how to meet those needs has to involve tax reform.
A couple of sessions back, there were several reform bills passed that were designed, and I think mostly supported by the Chamber, to enhance Kentucky's economic competitiveness, and probably the most controversial or best known was right to work, among others. Are we seeing appreciable, definable, definitive results from that legislation? Has it helped us in terms of economic competitiveness?
It has. I mean, there's little doubt that over the last few years, we've seen headline after headline after headline of new investments, new business opportunities, unemployment going down, more people in the workforce. All of those things that we're seeing on the front pages of the paper, that we're seeing now about new businesses, that's what we said would happen if the state became a right-to-work state. And it truly was vital that Kentucky put that open for business sign on our door, and that was done by passing right to work. So we're seeing the benefits of that.
Labor participation rate is an issue, not just in Kentucky, nationally, but Kentucky has a particular problem. We rank toward the bottom. I don't remember the exact number, 46th, 7th, somewhere in there. What does the Chamber say that we need to do to increase that participation rate among the potential labor supply?
There's a lot of things. I think one thing we would have to mention is the opioid epidemic that the state's facing. A few months back, we held a conference, an opioid summit, so that we could put the issue on the forefront, in front of everybody, on everybody's radar. Brought together leaders, stakeholders, businesses from across the state, one room, to really talk about the problem. We've got to continue to look at policies that will help address that, help get people who have had instances and battles with that. Because when you talk about it, you've got to think first and foremost, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy for any family who has lost a loved one to that epidemic. But the way that we can win this battle is by making sure that we are rehabilitating people, and once they're rehabilitated, we've got to find opportunities for them to work. The need in the workforce is there, so we've got to continue to have discussions about how once we get those people out of treatment, we can give them opportunity, and that's how we're gonna win this battle. So that's one component. I think continuing to do things like Campbellsville University is doing, to make sure that we're identifying what are the job opportunities, where can you make a living, how can you make a living, what tools do you need to make that living, and getting those people connected with those opportunities and on those pathways. So education, obviously, going to be very important.
We seem to be making some progress on that overall issue. Very complicated. We could spend hours just on that particular issue. The chamber has undergone some recent transition
Yes.
in leadership. There's a Campbellsville connection.
There is.
And
a
I
big one.
love those Campbellsville connections. Tell us about that leadership change.
Yeah, Ashley Watts, who was a Campbellsville graduate, actually speaker at your all's most recent commencement, I believe,
yes.
is now graduated from public affairs and is the new CEO, president and CEO of the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. So we're thrilled. We were talking earlier before the cameras turned on, but she was the VP of Public Affairs, which is the department I work in. And we're so excited for her. She's done great things in our department, she's a true leader. And our organization's gain is actually probably going to be Public Affairs' loss. But we're so excited, and we know it means big things for the organization. It's going to mean big things for the business community. Ashley's going to bring a new energy to the scene that I think is going to be vital in making sure that we are effective for businesses across the state, and that's gonna mean, hopefully, like we said, more opportunity, making the state more competitive. She's proven to be a leader in public affairs and a strong voice in Frankfort and a strong advocate for the policies that will move and are moving Kentucky forward. And so having her at the helm is truly exciting, and I think means big things.
Ashley and I recently were on the phone together and discussing some things, and I reminded her the 2 years she served as Student Government Association president here at Campbellsville, and also we related some time she spent in my political science classes I was teaching at the time. Senator Max Wise and I, at least amongst ourselves, take partial credit. She probably doesn't acknowledge that. No, she does. She's been very gracious, among many other professors here at the university who saw in her the great potential that she showed. And we made several trips to Frankfort during those days. And you could see even then the leadership potential that Ashley had in her. Excuse me. Are there other issues? We're down to under a minute. We're out of time. We'll have to do this again soon. Other issues the Chamber's working on right now that would be of interest to our audience?
We've covered a lot of it. I think just finding reasons for me to come to Campbellsville is a top priority of the Kentucky Chamber, and one I'm very supportive of. But no, we're going to be doing a lot on education, infrastructure, and just continuing to build partnerships across the state to make Kentucky a big place to do
business. And I think
business.
one thing that people need to understand about the Chamber of Commerce, the State Chamber of Commerce, while it business environment and business advocacy is your mission, the quality of life and educational attainment, it benefits the entire Commonwealth.
It does. It does, and that's what we're going to stay focused on.
Travis Burton, thank you.
Thank you so
God
much.
bless you. This is John Chowning with Director of Political Affairs with the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, Travis Burton, thanking you for being with us for Dialogue on Public Issues.